The could the host start my video, please?
No, you have to start it. It's in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen.
Yeah, I tried. It tells me the host hasn't started. So do what you can. I'll keep clicking, but at least I got the audio part going. That's good too. Um, so anyway, as I said, I want to say good morning to everybody again. Shabbat Shalom. I see some people that are new and some people I haven't seen for a while. I'm glad to see everybody. And I also want to thank all the people in the congregation for participating more and more in the service itself. About a month ago, Carrie started asking different people to do this or that in the service. And I think it's enriching and it lets everybody get involved. And you're all doing a great job and we all want to keep it up. Now, I'd like to kind of follow up on Rabbi Foreman's message a bit this morning. First of all, I need to remind you that you do not have to speak Hebrew to understand his messages, nor to understand the Bible. There are many great translations, and they do an absolutely wonderful job of helping us understand what God is saying to us in His Word. So don't panic if you don't know Hebrew. But if you listen to Rabbi Foreman's teaching, he always explains it in both Hebrew. He explains the Hebrew and English, so you should be okay. In this particular portion from Tetzaveh, he's explaining the aspect of chiasm. Now, don't get freaked out. When I first heard about chiasms in seminary, I said, no, I don't know about that. That sounds kind of crazy. But what it is, it's God's additional way to communicate what's really on his heart to us by structuring the readings that he gives us. So you see in the chiastic structure that we saw this morning, everything pointed to one thing. And it's not just coincidence, it's God's structuring of this, and only God could do this. So I take a lot of, I put a lot of emphasis on what the chiasm is pointing to, and this morning was pointed to Truma, the offering. So I want to talk a little bit about that to you this morning. I want to go back to last week's portion, which was called Truma, and just read a couple of scriptures to you. The first one is from Exodus 25, verse 1, where we're introduced to this concept. It says, "Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, speak to the children of Israel, saying that they are to bring me an offering, a truma," that's the kind of offering, "from everyone who gives it willingly with his heart, you shall take my offering." And that's really the same message that closed the Aleph Beta video this morning, where the people were asked to bring an offering, a truma offering, lifting it up to God. So that's what I want to talk about with you this morning, because it's not just about offerings, it's about our hearts. Now, you know that in the wilderness, there was a sanctuary built right in the middle of all the people. This sanctuary, this Mishkan, was to be a reminder to the people of God's presence in their lives daily, as it indicated to them that God dwelt with them, which we appreciate, because if we don't believe God dwelt with us, what does it mean when it says the Messiah came and dwelt among us? Yes, he dwelt with us, and that gives us a sense of the very close presence of God to us. The offerings that the people were asked to bring included precious metals and stones, fine linens, material, animal skins, wood, oil for the lamps, and fragrant spices for the incense. These were all very mundane material things that God told the people to bring for the offering. Where did they get all this good stuff? The gold, the silver, the bronze, even the precious stones and other symbols of wealth and abundance. Where did it all come from? Just pop out of the sand? No, the offerings came from Egypt. When the Israelites left the land of Egypt, the Egyptians, as strange as this may sound, brought them all their wealth. Maybe they felt guilty for all the slavery. I don't know. Maybe God motivated them. But the Israelites walked out of Egypt with a lot of wealth, gold, silver, jewels, precious metals. And all that good stuff went into the building of the tabernacle. So the Israelites had to be very aware that they didn't bring all this wealth to God because they had earned it. This was God providing their wealth to give back to him. They knew that everything that they possessed really came from God and ultimately belonged to him. Therefore, they were perfectly happy to give some of it back to God. They didn't even think it was theirs. They understood that it all came from God. And I think there's a message to us in that thought, that everything that we have, everything comes from above. Everything comes from the hand of God, and we should really be understanding of that, because if we're not, we're missing the point that everything belongs to God. So when God asks us to give back a portion of that, we should not argue with him. We should just be willing to give. So a couple more thoughts on charity, on tzedakah, that I want to make mention to you. First of all, we have to understand that when we give to God, it elevates the material. When they gave all their wealth to God, it elevated into the building of the Mishkan, which was an elevation of those mundane things like silver and gold, which is mundane, earthly, and it translates it into a high and more lifted up thing. So this tzedakah, which means righteousness or justice or charity, also elevates what is given to God. It elevates the people and it elevates God. There were three types of truma mentioned in the scripture, three types. And they point out three aspects of giving to God. The highest level of giving, the most holy level of giving, is when the one who gives it has done so because he is commanded to give. In other words, that person faithfully gives to God what belongs to him, and he doesn't argue, he just faithfully give it. A lower form of giving, of truma, is when it's done for selfish reasons. For example, if a person gives to somebody to make themselves feel better, that's not quite as high level of giving as possible. And the lowest level of giving to God is when you feel compelled to give it, not willing to give it. The Lord instructed Moses to take an offering from those who were willingly giving from their hearts, not the ones that felt constricted to give. We have to learn how to give willingly to God. You know, God tells us that, in fact, in 2 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 7, he says these words to us: you must each decide in your own heart how much to give, and don't give reluctantly or in response to pressure, for God loves a person who gives cheerfully. That's 2 Corinthians 9:7, if you want to look it up. The tendency of our human nature is to be selfish. I think we have to just face the fact. And we really seek for what we can receive rather than for what we give. This is the natural state of the human being. But the Bible tells us that it's more blessed to give than to receive. Why does the Bible have to teach us that? Because we don't know it. So we have to learn that it's more happy, more blessed, more fulfilling to give than to receive. We're also told in the Brit Hadashah that if we do not give materially to a brother who is in need, the question of God's love being in us is there. If we can't give to somebody who needs help, what kind of people are we? What kind of godly people are we? So when we read in 1 John 3:17 these words, but whoever has the world's goods and sees his brother in need and closes his heart against him, how does the love of God abide in him? That's a good question. If we see somebody, one of God's creatures, in real need and we don't help out, how does the love of God abide in us? How can it stay there? So that's the question there. We must always remember that it's not just the act of giving that matters, but the motivation behind it. For even if we give all that we have to the poor, but don't have love, we are nothing. 1 Corinthians 3:2. There's a rabbinic saying that you might like. If one gives his fellow all good things in the world, but he gives them with a sullen face, it is as if he has given nothing. In other words, giving is something that should be come from our hearts, a generosity of spirit. Now, another little side side story to tell you. In the temple, there was something called the secret charity chamber. Jewish people have always been taught that it's better to give anonymously, meaning so that the receiver doesn't know where the money came from or the gift came from or where the blessing comes from, and the person who gives the blessing doesn't do so with a name. It's all anonymous. The donor and the beneficiary of the gift are unaware of who they are, who each other is. There's something righteous about that. And in this secret charity chamber that's in the temple, in the tabernacle as well, donations could be dropped off and picked up without anybody knowing anything. It was all done in secret. Now, it's entirely possible that there was this treasury box, this secret charity chamber or treasury box, is what Yeshua was looking at when he saw many, many rich people putting in money into this so-called secret box, but it says they were making a lot of noise. They were their money, which was silver coins, when they threw their money into the secret charity box, it wasn't secret at all. They wanted to do it for show, which is not the way to give. So what happens? A widow puts in 2 small pennies, and Yeshua said that what she gave was worth more than all those rich people gave because she gave it from her heart. That is the way that we should understand charity or tzedakah. It should be given not for show, but for out of our heart's desire to bless somebody. So Yeshua, I believe, picked up on that and gave that story, that parable to us to know. This shows us that it's not really necessarily how much we give, but what's in our heart when we give it that counts. Our faith to give out of our own needs, the sacrificial offering of our own hearts is what counts. The truth of the matter is that when we give, especially toward the work of God, we receive back much, much, much more than we give in the first place. So as we give generously, we find ourselves generously receiving in return as well. In order to be blessed, we need to understand the spiritual law of sowing and reaping. He who sows sparingly will reap sparingly. If you don't put much seed in the field, when you planting season comes, you're not going to get much corn or wheat in the fall when everything is harvested. If you sow sparingly, you reap sparingly. This is a natural principle in farming, and the spiritual principles, they're the same. If we sow sparingly of our love, of our generosity, of our giving, we reap sparingly as well. Proverbs 11:25 kind of gets it. The generous soul will be made rich, and he who waters others will be watered himself. This is all about the truma offering, the lifted up offering that we're talking about. And this applies more to not as much to financial giving as it does other sorts of giving in our lives. When we can be generous in giving out compliments or giving out kindnesses or just being kind to other people and showing love to other people, we receive back in greater number, much more in greater number. But if we are angry all the time, if we're bitter, if we're judgmental, if we're critical, if we're always condemning people, we're going to receive the same thing back, and we don't want that, do it. We want people to be kind to us, merciful to us, and encouraging us and to love us, and therefore that's the way we have to be toward them. As it says in Luke 6:38, give and you will receive, your gift will return to you in full, pressed down, shaken together, means to make room for even more, running over and poured into your lap. The message is give generously out of our heart's abundance, and God will bless us equally much. With the same measure that we use, the same measure we use, that will be the measure that will be used for us as well. So we want to make sure, my friends, that we give a lot of people praise. Have you given praise to somebody that deserves praise, deserves thanks, deserves appreciation? Ask yourself that. We want to make sure that we are encouraging the people. Do you encourage others? Do you say to people, good job, or you did great? Or do you just critical? Do you say nothing at all, or even are you critical? We need to learn to be generous of spirit and learn to give generously and give praise. We do give encouragement. If somebody seems to be struggling, give them a word of encouragement. That one word, I'm serious, one word can make all the difference in a person's life. You don't know what somebody's struggling with on a given day. Give them a word of encouragement. It picks them up. It lifts them up. Give love when you can. Give help when you can. Give blessings whenever you can. I don't mean just financially, but emotionally. Sometimes people really need that more than they need a couple of dollars in their pocket. Although there's nothing wrong with that, but they need to be loved. They need to be appreciated, need to be blessed. So think about being generous toward other people. I would say that speaking of the Truma offering, the lifting up offering, remember, and Rabbi Foreman's discussion about how the ark was lifted up, and the ark of Noah was lifted up, the ark of the covenant was lifted up. When we give to people, when we give generously, it not only lifts us up in the offering, the Truma offering lifts us up, it lifts up those that we give to and everyone around us. It makes everything a better place. It makes a congregation a better place. It makes a country a better place. It makes our world better when we can lift other people up. So the challenge I have to us today, considering all the comments about the chiastic structure pointing to one thing, and that is the Truma lifting up offering, let us do the same thing. Let us lift up people. Let us lift up the Lord by doing so. He will be very pleased. I'm going to close with a short little prayer. Thank you, our Father. Thank you, Adonai, for you have given us everything. Just like you gave our ancestors everything that came out of Egypt, that they could turn it and use it for you, you've given us everything. So since we know everything comes from you, Lord, help us to be willing and cheerful to give back what you are building in our community, whether it's our congregation or the people that we know associated with our congregation. Lord, help us to take all these free gifts you gave us and give them back to others who need them as well. You want us to sow generously, and Lord, I ask you to make us cheerful and generous givers, not only about our finances, but our entire way of life. Help us, Lord, to love people as you love them. Lord, help us to have compassion on those who are needy and kindness to those who need a good touch. And Lord, in the name of the Messiah, who gave his whole life for us, I pray, amen.